Hello everyone, it's Matsimus. Thanks again for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. So once again, we are talking about the controversial subject of joining the military when you are young, and specifically at the age of 16. As most of you are aware, I did join the army at 16 and it was the best decision of my life. I would not be where I am today without doing that particular action in my life. This is in no way a video to try and persuade younger generation or youth to join the military, and it's not there to sell the principle of doing so. This video is to try and justify the propaganda, or to not allow the justification of propaganda that's been placed out there for those who do wish to do so. What I'm stumbling across more and more lately in the modern day society is more and more social media outlet of this tripe. Now, this video that I recently found is another one of those don't enlist at 16 videos where this veteran ex-British soldier has for some reason decided to completely bash on the British Army and its, I guess, techniques in recruiting at a young age. Each to their own. This is not a personal attack on this gentleman at all. I completely respect his opinion and his experiences. Everybody experiences things very, very differently within their lifestyles. But what I don't agree with is the outlet that this gentleman has decided to voice these opinions. I find that the organization that has somehow recruited this gentleman to do this speech have really used him as a scapegoat for their own particular opinions, views, and status in trying to stop people trying to join at a young age. Now, once again, like I said, I'm not trying to promote young people joining at a young age. I'm not trying to make out as if it's this up and great glory thing that you should do. I will say from first-hand experience that I have found it to be extremely successful for me in my life, but that's not what we're going to talk today about. This video that I recently stumbled across is called What's Life Like After the Army? And this gentleman is going to tell us all the different things that basically he didn't find allowed him to transition well out of a military career. Now, before we go ahead and actually discuss this video, a little bit about this video, let me just quickly talk about my experiences after leaving the army, which I can do a separate video on in the future because it'll be a little bit more in depth. But I will side to some things that he is saying, but not in the context he's putting it in. Yes, it is extremely hard. It is every day hard when you leave the military or the army to want to go back, or to not have the expectations you thought when you left. This gentleman here has definitely come across the not expecting what he was expecting to come out of the military. Things just didn't work out the way he planned. Things just weren't all, happy and smiley and, all the things the army tell you. Well, of course they're not going to be, because the way that you leave the army is all down to you. It's the way you portray yourself, the way you try and interact with the civilian world and try and transition. It's really down to a personal matter. This is not something that the army can change for each individual person. It's just an experience that you have to go through. This guy's experience has not gone well, and we're going to watch this video. We're going to have a quick look at what exactly he felt was the things that weren't going so well for him, and then we're going to discuss a little bit about some of the things that he's just clearly making out to be such a negative view on the army's ability to transition people out of the military. So let's just look at it right now.
When you leave the army, you're sort of left in this limbo where you're not in the military, so your friends in the military don't see you as a military guy anymore, but you don't feel like you're a civilian. So you're sort of in this limbo state where you don't feel like you can identify with either or, so you sort of feel very alone and vulnerable.
Okay, so he's decided to leave the army. This is the first thing that we must discuss here, because he has actively made the decision to not be a part of the army anymore. But then on the other side of things, he's saying, well, the army's their own being, and you're in this limbo where you're not a soldier and you're not a civilian. You have now decided to not be a soldier, so you can't bring up the fact that you're in this limbo when you're not a soldier anymore. You chose to do so. Now you're a civilian. As soon as you leave the army, you're technically a civilian. Now, most of us who enjoyed their military career will always say that a little part of them will always have a soldier for their soul, their part of their being. It's just part of who they are. Myself, I definitely would say that. There is definitely soldier in me no matter what. It's in my blood since joining the military. Since I was a boy, I always wanted to be one. It's just there. And when you go through an army lifestyle, it's just a part of you. It's what made you, you, even if it wasn't a good experience. It's just what made you, you. He's now saying, well, I've gone into the civilian world because he chose to, and now he can't accept himself into the civilian world. This is, again, a very personal problem / issue that he's trying to put onto the military and saying, or the army, and saying, well, now I've come out of the army, I'm not, able to transition well. The army provides you with so much support now when you leave the army. So much. I'm not even kidding you. Those of you who are veterans who have left the British Army should know this. You should know that the packages are there. There's counselling, there's workshops, there's education grants, there's programs, there's support groups, there's phone lines, there's there's information sessions, there's websites, there's social media. There is tons and tons of stuff to transition you from a military or army style career or even world to a civilian world, and it's not easy. No one said it would be easy. No one said it would be this happy place to go to straight away. It takes time. It's very difficult. I still to this day am struggling very, very, very hard to transition to a civilian world, but I don't put that on the army. I don't say to myself, I'm having a tough time going into civilian world because I joined the army, or the army hasn't supported me enough, or it's not done enough to allow me to integrate into civilian world. No, that's not it at all. And this kind of video is trying to portray the fact that because this gentleman joined when he was young and didn't have the chance to be a kid, or didn't have a chance to do all the things as a civilian when he was younger, that now when he did leave the army, he can't transition well. And I think that is just bogus. Like, it's just absolute garbage. It's not what the army has ever wanted to have happen to soldiers that are leaving. They want to be able to have soldiers leave and go into a successful new life. Why would they not? Why would they just want to, let people leave and to be like, off you go, fella, I don't particularly care about you? Of course they don't want to do that, because at the end of the day, that soldier at some point, or civilian transitioning, may one day rethink, maybe actually this isn't the greatest idea, I want to go back. Okay, so the army will always have that sort of saying as, well, if you want to go, that's your choice, but we're always happy, or for the most part happy, to take you back in, and we'll support you going in a civilian world. This gentleman, for some reason, and I don't particularly know why, has chosen to kind of blame the army a little bit about leaving into a world that he can't accept himself into, which it doesn't make much sense. So here's the next question. What are the most common problems for young soldiers leaving the army? This is my perspective, and I was quite young leaving the army. I did my 8 years and served very, very happily for the most part, and there's always going to be tough times, of course. The biggest problem for me since leaving the army is just leaving the army. I should have stayed in. Personally, it was a mistake to not leave. It was a mistake to jump into it so quickly. But it's not a mistake for me to leave. I'm now happy living in my new lifestyle. Am I missing the army? Of course I am. And the transition into the army world, into the civilian world, is extremely difficult. But I don't see it as being something that I can't deal with without the correct support. And there's always that support, like I just mentioned. So let's just see what he says.
During the seeing the recruitment ads, one of the big things is, you get friends for life. I have never had any military friend message me, how's it going, or do you need any help, or anything like that. That never happened to me personally.
Okay. This is such a personal experience. This is a very interpersonal situation that we're talking about here. We don't know this guy for Adam. We have no idea who he is, how his personality traits are. Was he a good soldier? Was he interactive with his friends? Was he proactive at trying to maintain relationships? We don't know this. We're going on the presumption that this soldier was very good at his job, which I'm sure he was. He had a lot of good army friends that are very close to him, which I'm sure, again, he has. And we're also presuming that he's actively left the military and tried his best to keep in contact with those soldiers to make sure that he continues those bonds that he left after the military. I can almost guarantee you, and this is from my personal experience too, he probably didn't do so, because when he left the army, he figured, well, I'm going to go and find into my new life, my civilian life, and try and make civilian friends and, touch base with civilian people who I can interact with. Your army buddies are factually, yes, you're right, they're doing their own thing. They're in the army, they're doing their own world, their own lifestyle. They don't have time, the geographic location sometimes, the ability even, whether it be social media or contact via phones and stuff, to keep in contact with someone who has left. It's just a different world, it's a different mentality. Even in my job that I work in right now, my civilian job, changing from one shift to another, sometimes your friends just transition because you're not able to see them as much anymore. That's not because you don't want to. It's just a natural side effect of leaving a particular friendship group, time span, career, job, situation, whatever it may be, and you just got to kind of accept that sometimes. If you really still want to be friends with those people, you need to put that extra effort in to do so. Are the soldiers in the army going to do that? I don't know. That's subjective to whoever the people are. But I don't think it's fair to say to the army ethos is, oh, you know, friends for life. The army doesn't provide you friends for life. Actually, it does, because I can almost guarantee if you were to message one of those guys and be like, I really need your help. I'm going through a really tough time. Like, I'm really struggling. I can almost guarantee that those people would be like, oh shit, dude, I'll come help you. Like, I haven't heard from you for a long time, but I'm here if you need me. You know, I remember our time when we were in the army. We were really close. We were good friends. I'm sure I could help you out some way, whatever it may be, even in the smallest amount. I know myself, I would do that. If someone was going through a hard time, I would for sure try and help out people and to give them support. Even if, you know, I can barely remember their names, they're still part of my military brotherhood in a way, and I look after them. And I don't understand why this gentleman has placed this stigma on the army as saying they don't provide you friends for life. Of course they may not if you don't put the effort in to provide the friendship and the bond that you can make in the army. But if you have tried in doing all that, transitioning into a civilian world is naturally going to create that stigma of, you know, they're not my friends for life because they're not supporting me and contacting me and keeping friends with me out the army. Well, of course they're not. They're not in the same world as you anymore. That happens everywhere. It's like working at a car dealership. And you're best friends with all the guys at the car dealership, and then you go to another car dealership. Do you really think the other car dealership friends are going to be like, whoa, come on, buddy, let's go hang out for the next couple of weeks or whatever? And it just doesn't work. Do you see where I'm going with this? It just seems like he's trying to place this all on the army, and it's such an interpersonal situation that I don't think it's fair to do so. Let's see what else he says.
For me, I'd say it took about 2 or 3 years to, you know, be able to come out of this bubble myself. So if everyone's alone in these bubbles, no one's going to communicate. You know, it takes a long time to do that.
I don't understand alone in these bubbles. What bubbles is he referring to? The bubble I think he's referring to is he's left the military, because I know fine well he doesn't want to be in it anymore. He's created this bubble where he wants to be a civilian only now and wants nothing to do with the army because apparently it's treated him so bad. But at the same instance, he wants all of his army friends to keep being friends with him and really close. You can't have that mentality. You can't have this, you know, the army did nothing for me, it treated me really badly, and, you know, it didn't support me when I left and all this good stuff, and then expect your army buddies to be on the same mentality as you and to give you all this friendship and support. It's just not going to happen.
I had a meet up with a few friends the other day, and there is like a bond there. But you're just moaning about how rubbish the army was. That's what you spend your time thinking about, yeah.
See, and there he goes. He's just contradicted himself. Did you just hear what he said? There is a bond there. So again, he's met up with his friends. So 2 minutes ago he said, you know, you don't have friends for life. But he's now left the military, gone into a civilian world. He said there is a bond there. But all you ever do is bitch about the army. Well, that's what you do in the army too, and it's hilarious. We just make fun of the army because it sucks. But that doesn't make the army as a whole this you know, mentality of once you've left the army they don't care about you, which is what he's trying to make out right now, is that your friends don't care about you once you've left. Or you know, then they don't want to be as close to you anymore. And it's just not true. Source: MOD Early Service Leavers Guidance Notes for Resettlement Staff. I'd love to know where they got those figures from. The Ministry of Defence Early Service Leavers Guidance Notes for Resettlement Staff. These are guidance notes? Guidance notes for resettlement staff. What this means is there's no factual data or figures from this. What this means is the MOD has done some sort of research or some sort of, I don't know what, because it's got no statement, it just says source, okay, to give to their resettlement staff, who are the people who look after you when you're just about to leave the army and give you the guidance and stuff. And they put it into a guidance note, not a book or, you know, form or any kind of, you know, documented setup, just guidance notes. And they're saying that the young soldiers, the most obvious to be, what's it say, substance misuse, depression, increased risk of homelessness, crime, unemployment. This is all just complete, like, no. This is complete bogus. Like, you could say this for any kind of group. Okay, this is like saying young people who leave work at McDonald's, who lose their job at McDonald's, are just as more at risk to do substance misuse or homelessness or crime and unemployment. That's what youth in general, not just coming from the military, do that. In general, the army doesn't increase their risk of homelessness and crime and unemployment. If anything, it decreases it, because they have at least a little bit of skill set there to help them. I find this absolutely hilarious. And they increase risk of substance misuse when they return to civilian life. This is probably why. The people who are returning to civilian life who are increased risk of substance misuse probably already used it prior to going into the military and have missed it for so long, so go hardcore on it when they get out and get into a bad place. In terms of homelessness, crime and unemployment, again, you're throwing huge dynamics in there, whether it be from where you're from, your family location or situation, how much money you were spending in the army. If you were smart and saved a little bit, or you weren't good at spending in the military, or you just weren't a good soldier, of course you're going to have crime, unemployment. Unemployment's going to be obvious. If you weren't a good soldier and you come out in civilian life and expect to be getting employed straight away, this is all so subjective. And this absolute garbage here of, early service leavers guidance notes. Are you kidding me right now? Like, come on. Just chunk.
The reason why, the army doesn't reach out is because you're now a civilian and you're not one of them anymore, and you're not part of that clique. You're seen as like a person, that's Wayne, he used to be with us, but he's not anymore.
Garbage. God, such garbage. Like I've said many times, the army provides you with so much support when you leave. The resettlement package I thought was fantastic. It provides you with tons of information, guidance, sources for when you leave. The army provides you educational grants that you can use up to, I think, 15, 20 years or something like that afterward. Enhanced learning credits or something like that. Fantastic opportunities there that you can utilize once you leave. You're not just cut dry when you leave. There is no click. What's he making this click about? If I had a problem once I was in civilian life, even to this day, right now, I could call the Army's support groups and they would be able to provide me support. Whether it be counseling, whatever it may be, they will provide it. It comes under an agreement between the Army and yourself when you leave that they'll give you this kind of support. There's support groups, there's phone lines, there's, like I said, the enhanced learning credits, all these different programs that will support you. There's no click. The army doesn't say, hey, once you're gone, I don't want nothing to do with you. Don't call us, don't come see us, don't ask for guidance. That's garbage. And he's clearly had some sort of experience here with a resettlement program that's not provided him with enough support to see that it is there and is available, and he just wants to burn the army with this video. And look at this article in the background from Newsnight says former soldiers struggle to adjust to civilian life. Of course we do. Of course we do. We're soldiers. It's a completely different world. Struggle? Yes. Unbearable? No. Maybe to some, yes. It can be very, very difficult to the point where they don't want to, even be in that world in any way. But it's always going to be a struggle. It's like being an athlete, an Olympic athlete for 8 years, and all of a sudden you're told you can't be an athlete anymore, or I don't want to be an athlete anymore. I just want to go and work in an office somewhere. Of course you're going to be like, well, this is kind of difficult to do. I miss being, athlete and all that stuff. Of course it's going to be difficult. Doesn't mean it's not possible. Okay, and nothing in this article here says youth, 16-year-olds, nothing. It just says former soldiers. That's any age group. So how this relates to being 16 years old and enlisting is beyond me.
The reason why you don't reach out to your civilian friends is because you don't want to be seen as that guy who's failing. It's only years afterwards you start to see other things, and what is civilian life is normal life, and that was actually abnormal life, which is the complete opposite way around to what you've got it in your head.
Okay, so again, he's trying to make out like, the army life isn't normal and civilian life is, and now because you've come into a normal world from an abnormal world, it's very difficult. If the military world wasn't normal for you, why did you ever join? I mean, no offense to this guy, but he's got the infantry's cap patch tattooed on his chest. He must have had some commitment towards the army at some point. I'm not sure what burnt him so bad to want to create a video like this, but he's obviously having a very tough transition into the army world, from the army world and the civilian world, and I don't think this was the best outlet to do it from. He's clearly not had the best support given to him, which, you know, is not always going to be the case for some people out there. This is another interesting article. We are trained to kill, so civilian life is tough. In a remarkable and brave interview, Johnson Bihari reveals the daily torment he faces after fighting for his country, and explains why he is still fighting for his army comrades. If any of you know who Johnson Bihari is, you will understand why civilian life would be so tough for him. He is a VC winner, Victoria Cross winner. If you research the actual acts that this young man soldier performed, you'll be astonished. He saved the lives of multiple people in his warrior crew, an absolute hero, to be honest, for the British Army there. And of course, transitioning into a civilian life is going to be very difficult for someone like that, because they've literally gone through hell. He's won the VC, for crying out loud, the highest decorated honour for the British Army, and he is definitely going to find a difficult world to go into in civilian war, because he has literally run through hell and back. You can't put that stigma on every soldier who's leaving. And yes, it is difficult if you are trained to kill and trained to be a soldier to transition into a civilian life, but it's not impossible, and it's not something that should deter you, especially those watching this video who are young, to wanting to join. As I mentioned before, we look after our own and we support one another, and the army does so. Even in the civilian world supports soldiers who are leaving. They provide, resume writing services, all sorts of different pieces of support there that can help. So again, just because this article's been put on there doesn't relate anything to being 16 years old and joining.
When I was 19, I thought I knew everything about the world, and I thought, I'm the best guy ever. I know everything. I've been to war and all this type of stuff. It's only when you get out you realise, actually, I know basically nothing about the real world.
What is the real world? What is this real world he's talking about? Like, the real world at 19? Dude, you're 19. You shouldn't know nothing about the real world because you're 19 and you're in the army. When you grow up a little bit more, you'll start hitting the real world. Like, maybe beyond the ages of 21, 22, when you maybe have, a very long-term girlfriend. You have to support children. You have to, not just get drunk with your buddies all the time. You have to actually, save your money for important things for your future, like retirement, savings plans, maybe wanting to buy a house. All those things still apply when you're in the army, surprisingly enough. In fact, it's actually easier in the army because the army provides you a lot more support in doing so. In the civilian world, you got to get on with it yourself. And maybe that's what he's relating to, is he doesn't like the fact that the army isn't babysitting him to do his life. Because the army does, it babysits you. It looks after you. It does everything for you, pretty much. All your payroll, all your accounting, your taxes, your food, your bedding, your accommodation, everything is done for you. It's like the film Jarhead, where he tells you everything has a place. There's always someone who can do something for you in the world of the military. Whether you're sick, you go to the med bay. If you need new boots, you go to the stores. If you have a financial problem, you go to the financial department. Everything's there for you. Whereas a civilian, it's not. You've got to proactively do it yourself. So him complaining, saying the army isn't doing it for him, or the civilian world's tough and you have to learn the real world, well, yeah, you do. You do need to learn the real world. Because that's what the real world is about, independence. And the army is providing you that independence still as the same instance as you would if you're in the civilian world. You're just going to have to wait later on in your career to do so. I don't understand his point here.
Yeah, and you leave with no idea of how to engage with people emotionally.
You leave the army without being able to engage with people emotionally. I, again, don't understand that at all. Like, that's a huge spectrum to go across. Emotional engagement with what? Women? Friends? Family? Finding new friends? It's huge. This is a very interpersonal skill to try and, interact with others. That should be something that he personally may be having issues with, not people who are just joining from the age of 16 in the army would have personal issues with. I mean, when I left the army, I had no real concerns with transitioning to speaking to civilian people. They're just people. They're just everyday normal people. Just because you're a soldier doesn't make you any higher, lower, different from them. Your experiences are different, but it shouldn't make you speaking to them or interacting with them any different. I myself, the only thing I ever found difficulty with is the sayings. I used to say things in abbreviated form and army terms, and they'd just be like, "What do you say?" That's the only thing I ever really found difficult with. Otherwise than that, they're just normal people. Of course, they're not soldiers, so you can't have the same sort of humorous banter with them. But that's easy to get over. You just got to accept the fact that it's a different world. But you have chosen, this guy has chosen to go into that. He chose to leave. So if anything, you'd think he'd be more proactive in trying to accept the changes he has to do to make it into that new world. But no, he seems to be very intolerant of this new world he's chose to be in, and very difficult to be in. I just don't get it. And here's another report. Young soldiers most at risk for post-traumatic stress disorder. The report, published 28th of October 2013, claims soldiers who joined the army before turning 18 are exceptionally high. The report comes from human rights group Forces Watch and pulls together research from 150 studies in addition to high risk of Peter. Well, okay, so fair enough. There's some actual report there. That's a report is good. Okay, so it's actually something that's been studied, and you know, I'm not going to fight that. I haven't read the report and I haven't seen the facts and studies made on it. But at the end of the day, again, it's quite subjective to what trade you're in, what corps, what role you're playing, where you served, how long you served for, what your background is. Are you emotionally stable in the first place? Have you taken drugs in the first place? Have you been stressed whilst training? Was your training good? Did you have stress prior to joining? There's huge things involved in that, and I don't think that you can put it all on just joining at the age of 16. It's just it doesn't make much sense.
All these troubles just become worse and worse in your own head, and for me that come out with depression, yeah. So friends for life's a load of rubbish. Yeah.
Oh, friends for life is a load of rubbish. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, buddy, and like I said to you guys, I totally respect this guy's opinion. I'm not gonna shame on him and say, that's complete BS. What I'm gonna say is I'm gonna voice my own counter to this, not argument, counter debate to his opinion. Is I don't think that the experiences that he's had in his army career should relate to what youth who are wanting to join the army should look into. He is at the end of the spectrum, and those who are wanting to join are at the beginning. Don't ever listen to someone at the end of the spectrum. Don't. Listen to those who are halfway between or going through the beginning. Because at the very end, you're looking at someone who has gone through an entire process of time span, say a career or life experience, and they've made their own conclusion. Don't listen to those people's conclusions. They may have had a bad time of it. You may have a fantastic time of it. If I told you right now, like I said at the beginning of the video, that my army career was fantastic, I loved joining at 16, would you still do it? I don't know. If you listen to him, what he just said, and he said it's not a good idea to join because after the army you're not going to get all the things that you think you would get, and it's going to be a horrible, tough life for you in this new world, would you join? I don't know, and that's a decision you have to make. It's a decision that you have to choose really deep down and say, is this what I want to do? Do I want to be a soldier, or do I want to be a soldier and think about something after the army? And it always comes back to that. If you're going to join the army, especially at 16 years old, you've got to say to yourself, is this something I want to do for the long term? If you're just doing it to get some quals and doing it for the interim, then maybe you do wait till you're 18, until you've matured a little more and made those conscious decisions to say to yourself, maybe I should learn a little bit more, go do some different things, and make a more informed decision on joining. But don't let this video, or videos like this, or people like this, dictate what you think is the right thing to do. It's down to you and your own experiences and opinions. You've got to stick to what is true to you. And like I said, don't listen to the end of the spectrum. Don't listen to the guy who's had a tough time of it and make his experiences change yours. It's not going to make your life any easier. Sometimes you've just got to jump into things and see how it goes. If it doesn't work out for you, then leave, like this guy has. But then in the same instance, don't come back and blame everything on the establishment that tried to support you to go through that. Because the army has pretty much done everything, I can almost guarantee, to help this soldier do what he needed to do, both in the military, before and after. So, videos like this just frustrate me. What's life like after the army? Tell you what, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a video on this in the future, and it'll be my own personal take of what's life like after the army, and I'm going to give you like descriptive sections of what's going on in or had happened in my life once I left, the pros, the cons, the ups, the downs, and you can make maybe a little bit more informed of a decision. But again, I'm at the end of the spectrum on the positive side, so I'm probably maybe not the best person to listen to, because I'm at the totally opposite end of the spectrum to what he is. So you should really just kind of go on what you have researched in your own, career or what you want to be, and just roll with it and take the plunge. And if you don't want to, then wait till you're 18. There's no pressure to join. There's no time limit. At 16 you are young, yes, but there is a rewarding career both at 16 and 18 years old. It's up to you to decide when you want to join, along with your family, I guess. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate you stopping by today and watching today's video. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, let me know what you think of this video and this guy's opinion and my opinion too. If you think I'm wrong and this guy's right, then let me know. Maybe counter me with some stuff, let me know. But I really, really, really appreciate you stopping by. And if you do wish to support my Patreon, guys, then I'd really appreciate it if you go check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description box below. And I hope you have a wonderful day. All the best, and bye-bye.